Welcome back to the Always Aggressive podcast, post Big Ten Championships edition. We're gonna do things a little bit differently the next couple weeks. I know you guys have some travel coming up next week that will alter our plan for next week a little bit. We wanted to get on the record today before NCAA brackets come out, so we can really focus on last week's results out at Penn State for Big Ten Championships, and then we'll come at you early next week with a deep dive into NCAA preview and brackets and all of that sort. So, guys, welcome back from the mountains of central Pennsylvania. I probably just butchered that geography, and I apologize to all of our listeners in Pennsylvania. But
we took a plane in. We could have landed on the moon and we wouldn't have known any difference, Cory. We took a plane in. We stayed in the Happy Valley for a few days, and we got out. So
and that was it. And
so the geography is kind of irrelevant.
Had a Purdue pilot coming home. I was happy to see that. That's always great to keep it in the family, so to speak. But Coach, off the top, just overall thoughts on 2021 Big Ten Championships.
Yeah, I mean, I would say just from a Big Ten championship, irrespective of how Purdue did, successful in terms of, man, we had one, right? Like, think about how long ago we weren't even sure if we'd have a season, and there were starts and stops and pauses. And we've talked about the fact that we were only 3 teams, I think, to get all of our duels. And so the fact that we had 14 teams together in one building, not a single positive, at least of an athlete that I'm aware of, right? Like, everybody made it in the bracket and continued to wrestle over the course of the 2 days. So from just the standpoint of we had the event, we got through her, and we now have qualifiers is a big deal. And just very appreciative of the Big Ten and Purdue and all of the schools that helped make this happen. So, successful definitely in terms of that criteria alone, right in the middle of a pandemic. Mm-hmm. So that's a big deal. And then, if you just look at how we did as a team, I know we'll discuss kind of, how we balance it out maybe in a little bit, but, some solid things happened for us this weekend. I mentioned in the past, it's a qualifier, right? And you look at it first, your first job is to qualify for the NCAA championships. And, having 8 guys go again, something that we've done. Yes, I would love to have 9 or 10, right? You would love to have more. I'm greedy when it comes to that stuff. But 8 is a good number. When I look at this team and where we were at, that there's some great things there. Some history made, some freshmen, some true freshmen, right, who are going to be freshmen next year again for us, did some tremendous things. So there's some history there as well. And so, there's some points that I'd love to have back, some matches that would have maybe moved us up a place or two. But overall, I think it was a solid effort and a solid weekend by our guys in the Big Ten Championships.
A little perspective and a little history for everybody kind of listening or watching. Boilermakers finished 6th at the Big Ten Championships. We scored 76 points. We were 1.5 points behind Minnesota. Minnesota passed us with the heavyweight championship match. Gable Stevenson went out and got a major decision and threw 5 team points on the board to slip past us. So we were in 5th right up into the end. It is the first time since 2003 and 2004 that the Boilermakers finished top 6 in back-to-back seasons. Our 8 national qualifiers matches the most in program history for the 3rd straight year.
Yep.
For the 4th time under Santa Claus down there. And I can't give you too much credit. You get what I'm saying? Like, I want to pump you up and like make you sound great, but at the same time I got to keep you humble. So there's a little give and take there, right?
Sure, absolutely.
So 6 times in program history, we've sent 8 to nationals, and 4 of them are in the last 7 years. So I think that speaks volumes about the direction of the program and what we're doing here on a day-to-day basis. Especially since I came back into the program, that was a huge stepping stone for everybody.
Just keep going, man. We're not going to stop you.
So let that one go. It's fine.
so that's kind of the long and short of the history as far as what we did. I think there's no way better to kind of start into Big Tens than with our man Devin Schroder.
Yeah.
Devin made the finals again. He's the first back-to-back finalist for Purdue since Ryan Lang in 03 and 04. He did it the hard way. Came in as the 7th seed and had to pick some guys off on the way.
Yeah, we felt very good. I will say this. So even though he was the 7, and had got off to a slower start maybe this year, you know what I mean? We knew where he was sitting in the bracket. He was looking good. He had some guys he was very familiar with, had good career records against as well. And you knew he was trending, in the right way as you're watching his wrestling, not only in competition, but in practice, knew he was kind of trending in the right way. And I just think he seemed to be in a really good space emotionally as well, from a focus standpoint, from being happy and wanting to approach it, in a positive manner. So I think we went in expecting, honestly, that was my expectations for him. I'm sure he did too. We expected him to be there. Okay. And so, this is definitely a tournament he can build on and that he should learn from. He's got to do a better job in the finals. And I know he had a very tough opponent, but he had a good game plan and he executed fairly well early, right? Scoring the takedown on Spencer Lee, who has not been taken down in a while, but we let it get away from us after that with a couple of, near on far leg or fireman carry situations where we gave up near fall, and then the match really got away from us there. So when we talk about two sides of the coin, there's being some positive history and things there. I think, there's a lot of positives for Devin to take away. He's wrestling at a high level. His confidence should be where it needs to be. But then B, he still sees like, hey, if I execute in the right way, I can score and I can create situations for myself that are positive. But on the same hand, if I don't, right, if I get away from the game plan and I give up certain positions or certain ties, it can go away just as fast. And so that's what I hope he and every guy in our team understands, is that you have to be very disciplined and consistent in your execution of the match plan. And so a lot of positives for D, nothing but positive, and he has every right to be very confident, but he's got to understand that I've got to execute, I've got to hold to my game plan and not kind of get pulled out of it and let it get away from me like that.
You spoke to the fact that Devin got Spencer, got that first takedown against Spencer Lee. I did a little bit of historical research there, not a ton. Now he did give up a takedown to Ragusin in the quarters.
There you go.
So he got him first. However, in an unofficial capacity, Iowa's SID, we're pretty sure the last time Lee had been taken down was the 2019 Big Ten Finals against Sebastian Rivera.
Right.
Hats off to Mr. Ragusin and D. Schroder for that move. And honestly, Tony, I'm curious to hear your opinion. Devin got that takedown and he had Lee in a great position before they blew the whistle for blood time.
Yep. Yeah. No, I mean, you think about, Devin is very similar to Lee in terms of he wants to be on top, right? And he was able to put himself on top, and we just didn't get a chance to really go get something, for a turn in terms of a cross wrist or, or a rebar or something like that. So yeah, disappointing, but again, those things are going to happen, right? Sure. And so then it's on you to go back and execute again in the same way. And that's where, like I said, we got out of the game plan a little bit the next time we went to our feet. So those are the situations that we will be working on incredibly hard for the next week as we prepare for the NCAA tournament.
You alluded to the freshmen, so let's move there too as well. Two true freshmen. Well, we actually had 3 true freshmen in the lineup at Big Tens. I have no idea the last time that ever happened. But 2 of those 3 earned automatic qualifiers to the national championships. 133-pounder Jake Rundell finished 6th at 133. And freshman Garrett Ninehouse went out and got 5th at 165. By my quick glance at the record book, first time we've ever had 2 true freshmen qualify for nationals, and place at Big Tens. They both came ready to go. They had very different situations. They were both in that 8-9 slot to start things. But wrestled good tournaments and had good results, and as a result get to continue their season.
Yeah, by and large, they looked really good in terms of their composure and their focus while they were out there. Okay. The stage is definitely not too big for those two. You know what I mean? They've wrestled on that kind of a stage probably most of their life at national tournaments, their age groups or whatever. And I think they both enjoy that. They both enjoy the limelight and being out there and competing. And that's a big thing. Not everybody wants to be out there with the spotlight on them, right? That's not something everybody in this world enjoys. And I think they looked like they handled themselves very well. Yes, there's a few things, right, that I want back. There always is. Jake Rundell in his placing match, he's up 1 with 20 seconds, maybe a little less even. And the guy's got to shoot, he's got to come, and we kind of keep our hands reaching instead of hands down in the mat and getting our head in the way and putting ourselves in a front headlock. And there's a situation we can run the clock out, right? And Jake's very good from a front head. So those little things, right? Handling that at the end is kind of what I'm talking about as we discuss 2 sides of the coin here, right? Solid stuff. True freshman, top 6, right? Good, generally a good performance going to nationals, has a real chance to do something. But in order to get your ultimate goal, what you want, you got to clean up those situations. And that's one that comes to mind when I think about Jake, but in general, right, wrestled very hard. Effort was great. The way he went about his business on the weekend was great. Just was happy and pleased with him overall. But we got to clean up a few situational aspects of how he competed. Garrett, another guy where, and I think, it's interesting because Willie talked about this last week, that sometimes you go into the end of the year tournaments and these true freshmen are really, they get on a roll because, during the year you're learning, and this year has been no exception, maybe even more so because you didn't get as much time because of the pandemic or breaks in practices and things. And so, you see some of these young guys, and especially Garrett, where he's really hitting his stride, and he loves, that kind of big moment in the end of the year where everything that he wants is kind of there in front of him. And so he's he's excited about it. And so I think you saw him kind of perk up a little bit and even wrestle at a little higher level, made some of things go his way. And if you notice, he even kind of opened the gap up between him and some other guys where, he had Tucker first round. We'd lost a point match to Tucker. Well, he beats him. He gets the takedown and beats him in the opening round. So he flips that around, but he sees him again for 5th and 6th. And we had him on his back at the end and even opened the gap wider. So I think he's starting to understand that it doesn't have to be close, that, if he goes out and wrestles his match and makes a guy wrestle his match, that there's a lot of points out there, no matter how good they are, the number next to their name or those things. So yeah, great weekend for both of those guys, but still lots of room to improve. And I think you'll see another jump from those guys.
Cory, you have very quickly become a big Garrett Ninehouse fan.
Yeah, I have. He's fun to watch. I love how he strings moves together. I love how confident he is, and when he locked up that cradle on Jolie, holy cow. Like it was a really good match until that point. It was a little back and forth and then it was over. And he has that capability to be a closer like that. He can get something and string something together, and then the next thing you know, he's got you in a pinning combination, and like you're done. It's a lot of fun to watch him, and I can't wait to see the next 2 or 3, 4 years of Garrett Ninehouse.
Yeah, no, he's he's a dangerous guy, right? I mean, he can scramble a little bit. He's got some positions that, some guys aren't as strong in, that he's very comfortable. So I think he's a dangerous guy. Probably the thing for him will be to, work on some of the hand fighting and positional aspects of his game here for the next week. We watched his match. He was in yesterday watching film, and he had watched his match against, against the Bull, Marinelli.
Yep.
And just a very strong positional kid where, the look and what Marinelli's trying to do to you with the post to the high C, isn't going to change. So you've got to make sure, again, when we talk about like Devin, and you're wrestling a guy like, Marinelli, it's controlling the hands and staying inside with your hand fighting and some of those things. And if you get away from it or get lazy with it, even for a second, he's going to capitalize and attack, and now he's on your legs. So, again, I think a lot of excitement and a lot to be, upbeat about, right? Hopeful for in terms of what his national championships can be. He's just got to take care of a few little positional aspects, for him to kind of stay out of some dicey situations this weekend.
Well, another thing that I love is you look at a lot of the national rankings. I mean, we've all seen how good he can be. A lot of folks outside of this region and this area are still sleeping on him. He is, to my mind, nowhere near where he should be or where he could be. So yeah, he could still sneak up on some folks next week.
Yeah, I think that's probably a good general, kind of point going into nationals with everybody or very few people competing, out of conference. Some few did, but that Big Ten certainly didn't. And so we've been beating up on each other, and we'll have to do that to get on the podium, as well at the NCAA championships. But, some of those early rounds, it'll be nice just to see some different faces that aren't as aware or haven't felt Garrett or Devin or any bringing, to the national championships, because, our guys, they're wrestling hard and they're physical and they'll compete the whole time. By and large, we're just talking about working on some of these positional details or match plan things.
Yeah. A couple fun notes about Garrett, especially like I said, being a true freshman, leading the team in falls this year. I believe the pin with Joe Lee was his third of the season. So he's, a threat for bonus points, which is always a good thing. And then he leads the team significantly by a wide margin in reversals. I think he's got 9 reversals. I think he's had one in all but like 4 matches this year.
Does he really?
Yeah,
that's a ton of reversals for only having, what's he got, 14 matches maybe?
Give or take, yeah.
Wow.
So pretty
he's never looking for 1, he's always looking for 2.
Yeah, not a bad thing, especially when you're good on top, especially when you're a threat to pin somebody, working those bars and cradles. So pretty cool notes from him. We had 2 other guys get to 5th place. Parker Phileas got 5th at 141. Kendall Coleman got 5th at 157. A really good tournament from Parker Phileas.
Yeah. I was kind of waiting for you to bring his name up. I'm very excited about. A lot of our guys did their best wrestling this weekend, which is always, what you're trying to do, right? That's the intentional part. You're trying to peak for Big Tens and nationals. So that's part of the plan. But I thought, Parker had a very strong performance, minus 1 match. He had 1 match that I thought he let get away from him a little bit. But I'll tell you, the way he kind of got after Duncan, was his first match back. If people remember that far back, he didn't get a wrestle Northwestern.
Yep.
He came out against Duncan against Illinois' second duel of the year and really tried to shake the rust off, right? And it did. He was rusty. He got beat soundly in that match. And I tell you, he took Duncan down 5 times. Who's a top 15 kid, right? Like that's a round of 12 kid. A lot of people had pointed out earlier. And Parker, we talk about executing kind of a match plan or a game plan. And Duncan's one where if you hang on to your ties, he'll shuck or 2-on-1 and then it'll disappear to a leg or something. And it was a lot of touch and go stuff, right? A lot of low double legs from the open. And, that was a very strong performance by him. And again, another guy who, I think feels very good about their wrestling and where it's at as they go to nationals. But yeah, Parker did a nice job this weekend.
Yeah, that match against Dylan Duncan, I was in a weird spot at Big Tens. I couldn't see all the mats great because I was pretty low. But I believe we actually had two matches going on at the same time. He was wrestling Duncan on one end and we had somebody wrestling on the other end. And so my attention was kind of all over the place. I kept looking down and I kept seeing Parker score takedowns. And it was like, I keep looking down there and he's just, like you said, just firing away. And he was doing whatever he wanted. And to watch that first match of the year and then watch that match, not the same kid, right?
Yep. He's come a long ways in a couple months, just like a lot of guys. He's not the only one, but definitely from where he was that first duel of the year against Duncan to where he was on Saturday night, was fun to watch.
And it's not to be forgotten. He was red hot coming into Big Tens. His last two matches of the year, he went out and got bonus points. And the one against IU looks even better now that Caden Rooks got into the field.
Yeah, Rooks looked good this weekend.
He's out there and he's putting up some points against some sound people. His two losses at the Big Tens came to, two guys who pretty good. They're all right. Jaden Ironman and Sebastian Rivera. They're not bad. So I'll be interested to see where he ends up in the bracket at nationals and what kind of noise he's able to make going through at 141.
Yeah, I will say this, and this applies to everyone this year. And I know the selection committee is probably going to feel differently, right? They probably looked at records, but this is a year where you throw the records out, like you really do. Especially when you're wrestling an all Big Ten schedule, it's who knows who you've seen. You may be 3-5 on the year, but you saw 5 guys, that are all ranked top 10, top 12. I mean, you talked about Rivera. I mean, he wrestled Ironman, who's won. He wrestled Rivera, who has been won. Those are the kind of guys he's wrestling multiple times a year. And that's no different for a lot of guys in the Big Ten. So this truly is a year where, man, you don't look at a record and say, well, this is the kind of year he had or the kind of kid he is for anybody. I'm not looking at anybody going in the national tournament. This kid could be 12-3 and maybe he wrestled, 8 extra matches against the backups from other teams, to have. So I don't think there's any indication on the kind of competitor or the kind of foe you're going to face this year.
Well, and I want to come back to this. I don't want to jump into this now, but you say that, Tony, but at the same time, there were a lot of guys who got left home, like really, really good wrestlers who got left home because they had bad records. And so let's circle back to that for sure. Yep. But yeah, it's an interesting year for the NCAA tournament, 100%. Swinging back to Kendall Coleman, he also took 5th, beat Brady Berge from Penn State, who was the 5 seed, got a nice win there, and then took a forfeit from him in the 5th place match. Went out and got some bonus points in a couple matches. Just a solid overall performance from Kendall. Not what we hoped for, but definitely nothing to be upset about.
No, I think, Kendall, I'm sure Kendall's disappointed. I'm disappointed, not just in terms of, we expected him to be higher. He expected to be higher. So I'm sure there's a bad taste in our mouths, in his mouth. Right. So there's that bad taste, but, not for lack of effort in terms of, let's take the Soldate, loss in the semis. He was on the leg, 5 times. I think I had to go back and look like several times, but on singles and on the edge of the mat and didn't quite get the finish that he needed, right? Like one takedown probably wins the match for him. Soldate was not attacking and we wanted him to come after us as well. And so he got frustrated very late in the 3rd. Took a poor shot and just got way out of position, then I think that frustration, got him, right? It got him. So he needs to learn from that. No matter how you end up in these situations, you're there now, and you got the situation requires a certain approach or a certain execution, and he got away from that. I think the frustration ate him up, and he made a bad decision trying to make something happen, and it cost him, right? And so, so that my thing with Kendall is he's got to learn from that, and honestly, I'm glad it happened here at Big Ten, so we can watch it, and we can work on it, and have a better mental approach, as we finish tough matches out in the future.
3 more place winners at Big Tens, all 7th place guys. They did a really good job. Those were 3 key team points that we really needed coming down the stretch. Griffin Perriott took 7th at 149. Max Lyon got 7th at 84, and Thomas Panola got 7th at 197.
Yeah, proud of those guys, how they finished. Your back's to the wall a little bit. You know what I mean? I mean, if you think about it, they had qualified except for Thomas. Everybody knew at that point.
No, Griffin needed the win.
Oh, you're right. Oh, thank you. Yes, thank you. Yeah, you're right. So he had, and so you look at Griffin, like he's got a win to go, and he's got the 12th ranked guy in the country. And
Yaya Thomas is no slouch.
Yeah, but Yaya's been around, as you said, he's been around a long time. He's a top 12 ranked kid. That's a kid you're going to see probably in later rounds at NCAAs as well, right? So, just proud that he battled. Again, there's execution things that we're going to keep talking about. And I know everybody's like, Ersland, quit talking about execution of match situations. That's you can tell where I'm stuck at as a coach. So
you get so many comments that say that, let me tell you.
But he battled hard, and he went and he found himself a way to win. So we'll go find a way to score, and get up, sooner in the match and create those opportunities. But he battled hard. Same thing with Max Lyon. He had a guy like Owen Webster, who was the 4 seed, and again, ranked very high, right, going in.
Top 10.
Just really happy. Max turned around 2 matches that he had lost. And we've said before, Max does his best wrestling at the end of the year, and again, he did. He turned around the Rocky Jordan loss from the regular season, and he turned around the Owen Webster loss earlier. So there's another guy, when you talk about how are you trending, Max should feel very, very good and very confident in his wrestling and where he's going.
I'm really nervous for Max in that Rocky Jordan loss. I thought that was a bad matchup to start off the tournament, and he came out and delivered.
He followed the game plan to a T. I know Ers had a very specific set of instructions for Max, and Max went out and got it done. It was a nice sign of maturity to go out there and know exactly what he needed to do and to do it. Max, I'm really curious to see where Max ends up at nationals as a seed. Just because, the primary thing that the NCAA is supposed to value is quality wins, and Max has got a boatload of them. And so it'll be, he finished 7th at Big Tens, but you look how deep 184 is in the Big Ten. So I'll be interested to see where he ends up on the seed line.
Yep. No, it's gonna be very interesting. And again, in a shortened season against only conference competition, I truly don't know how the committee is going to look at it. So that's what makes it, less certain. In general, in years past, right? Like you can look at the data and you can kind of figure out, right? You can really, as a coach, you can look at the formulas, the seeding matrix they call it, and you can kind of have a good idea. This year, at least in my mind, I don't think you can just go straight seeding matrix because nobody's wrestled each other. How do you really know? And so I don't know how the committee is going to look at certain things.
It'll be interesting for sure. Final guy there, Thomas Panola. Panola went out and got 7th, missed the auto spot. They only took 6 at 197 in the Big Ten, which turned out to be a really interesting situation. Lost to 2 very good guys in Jacob Warner and Michael Beard. But took care of business when he needed to. That 7th place match was for a criteria spot. We got Billy Janzer from Rutgers, who he had beaten in the duel. But he definitely went out and made a statement, went out and got bonus points in that 7th place match, which was encouraging.
Yeah. We've said this all year. Tom's going to be a handful. I'm glad he's there. It was unfortunate the way that it had worked out. We knew Beard is a quality opponent, right, from Penn State. So, with Beard, again, I talk seedings here in a shortened season. He's the 7 seed, right? He's the one outside looking in the top 6. But, Penn State had sat out. He hadn't competed as much, so he deserved the 7. But he's probably, in reality, a guy like Tom who should be up in that top 6 anyway. I would have put him up a little higher had he not, sat out so much and missed a couple of duels. So deceiving there, right? So that's why I was glad to see that Tom got rewarded for the solid year that he had. You're being 10-4 and having some very good wins. Him catching the wild card was absolutely earned. I can say deserved, but he earned it through the course of the season too. So they got it right there where, we know some other kids who I think deserve to be in maybe didn't quite look like they earned it on paper. Although I could argue with the committee on some of that stuff. So,
yeah, that's kind of where I was going to take this next was the at-large seeds. The at-large bids came out yesterday. Added Tom to the travel party. A few other guys at 197 did not get in. Matt Wroblewski from Illinois, Gavin Hoffman from Ohio State. Neither one of those guys get in. You go down to 125, Justin Cardani from Illinois, who is without a doubt, I have zero doubt in my mind, he is one of the top 20, 125 pounders in the country. Yeah. Will not be going to nationals because he was 3-9 on the year. But if you look, his 9 losses were all the top 16 wrestlers.
Yeah.
So
and that's where
I don't know what to do.
Again, that's where I get frustrated because, when you are able to wrestle non-conference competition, okay, you can even things out, right? Like Cardani, I think they'd said, I saw somewhere he'd beaten Gutierrez, who's going again.
Mm-hmm.
So from Chattanooga, he beat him last year. You look at what his non-conference record typically had been, really strong. The people he was seeing at Midlands or some of these opens, it would have balanced out. He would have had a much stronger win percentage. He'd have had some nice wins over other nationally ranked kids just because he'd had more opportunities. And so you hate to see him get dinged for a poor record, and I think anybody in the Big Ten knows that he shows up and he wrestles hard. The kid shows up and he competes. So yeah, you feel bad for that kind of kid. And that's unfortunately where we're at in this pandemic. And we've discussed in the past this using the historical data, right? And what happened with certain allotments to certain conferences, it created this situation. So there's some good kids staying at home.
Yeah. Luckily it's not any of ours.
Well, right. Listen, we're still leaving good kids at home.
No, you're right. I take that back. Yes.
Yeah. I was going to say,
I would have loved to see what Emil Sundlin could have done against some non-conference competition.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, Emil Sundlin is a guy who, is a quality kid. He wrestled a very good schedule. We knew, and I think Emil knew too that it wasn't going to stack up well in the pool, right? So I'm not sitting here saying that Emil should be there, right? That's my point. It's more my point that. Emil last year had some very good wins, on his non-conference schedule, you know what I mean? And that had gotten him ranked top 20. And I have no doubt that had he been able to wrestle again, a non-conference part of the schedule, he would look much better than it did. Right. So now,
for sure.
I can't say that Dorian did not, as a true freshman, was not in the lineup a lot this year. So he just didn't have enough opportunities anyway. That's
right.
Kind of Dorian's situation. But Emil had being a regular through all 9 duels, the record didn't look good enough on paper, and we probably knew that.
Yeah, Wisconsin's Jared Kratinger was another guy from the Big Ten at 174 that got left home. So Emil was not the only one to suffer that fate at 174, which is unfortunate. It'll be interesting to see. I think the other thing I'm really curious to see from the NCAA in regards to seeding, or the brackets and seedings when they come out, is how much last year's data in regards to non-conference is going to be factored in, because of conferences not having a non-conference schedule. I'm really interested to see how that looks, just because, you know, it didn't seem to be taken into play with the at-large spots, right? So where is it going to shake out for these national seedings? Because, you know, I mean, Devin Schroder is the guy that I have in mind that, like, you know, had a bit of an up. I don't even want to say it's up and down, because it's not like he lost anybody who was bad, right?
Right.
He lost to good kids, but, you know, he comes out with, I think he ended up 10-4, maybe 9-4, somewhere around that range, as far as his
9-4
overall record. And, you know, his losses are to Lee, McKee, Foley, and Barnett, who are all in the field. They're all good kids, you know. This is the same guy. He was the 5 seed a year ago.
Yep.
And, you know, has 2 wins over Courtney from Arizona State. 2 wins over DiAugustino, who we didn't see this year. Oh, both the Courtney wins were bonus point wins. He's got a fall in a major. You know, he has beaten a lot of kids in the field. And so I'm really curious to see how that gets taken into account when they you know, they list out 1 through 33.
Yep. No, it's that's, I alluded to it earlier. I don't know, right? That's the scary part. I say scary. I mean, teams are going to come out and we're going to wrestle regardless, but that's the part you don't know. You know, you don't know how much are you rewarded for what you've done, you know? And to me, if you used historical data to reward qualifiers for this year, then absolutely the historical data should be used in terms of that seeding and looked at for consistency's sake.
Right.
If that's what you've decided, then they should take that into consideration. And I get, you know, the argument's gonna be like, Tony, that was a year ago. I get that. And most years you could convince me, yep, new year, nothing's the same, but you brought it into play, you know, in terms of how you wanted to reward qualifiers. So for the sake of consistency, I think you probably need to again.
Well, and the other,
it may hurt some of my guys at other weights, you know, but
right. Good.
kind of linking together 2 conversations we've had. You know, you talk about records earlier and this, like, sticking with 125, you know, most rankings have the top 4 guys are conference champs from the Big Ten, the MAC, the Pac-12, and the ACC. All 4 of them finished the year undefeated. Now, undefeated conference champs, great, but nothing against Drew Hildebrand or Brandon Courtney or Sam Latona. Those conferences aren't the Big Ten. It's just not the same.
And while I agree with you, Cory, and you know I do, right? Devil's advocate says it's not those kids' fault.
Yeah, right. I'm not stumping for anything here. It's just I'm going to be very interested to see. You know, you look through the rankings. There's a lot of dudes with undefeated records at every weight, 3 or 4 at virtually every weight.
I think they said last year there was 9 undefeated kids going into the NCAAs, and this year there's 40.
There's 5 just at 125. There are 5 undefeated conference champs.
Okay.
That's interesting.
Yeah. And so I think that's what I mean. Like there's some things that have to take a hard look at here. Who have you been wrestling?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You know, who have you been wrestling? Now, I will still tell all of my guys, and we've talked about this before, that you are absolutely the most prepared guys because of your conference schedule. And you did make it here. Now, there's some good kids that didn't, but you're here. We got 8 here who can score for us, right? And you are prepared because you had to battle, you know, every single night. You know, I mean, day in, day out. You just did, you know, a two-day tournament really tough.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah.
This wasn't a one-day tournament. This was 2 days of several tough matches in a row, which is what it takes to be a national champion, which is what it takes to be an All-American. You know, you're going to have to do 2-3 days. So, you know, it will absolutely and should pay off for, you would think, for the Big Ten teams and specifically us.
Yeah.
Agreed.
I don't envy the selection committee having to seed, you know, this tournament. It is, what a nightmare. I feel for those folks. I really do.
They should just let me do it.
Happy.
Just let me do it.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yes.
Just give it to Tony. Let him do it. It'll be fine.
Yeah.
Take 20 minutes. We're done.
Yeah. No problem.
Coach, another thing I want before we move on from Big Tens completely, you had mentioned last Friday in our little preview show the importance of winning the first match. Your guys went 8-2 in round one, and all 8 of the guys who won their first match qualified for NCAA. So feather in your cap. Turns out you were right about that.
Cory, don't do that.
Another thing I want to point out: your guys went 6-2 in placement matches in their final match. For placing. It's always, it maybe doesn't make a huge difference, between 5th and 6th, but you won your last match to get 5th and 6th, or 7th and 8th. You had 3 guys win their final match for 7th. Like Tanner said, those 3 team points were huge. The difference between 5th and 9th was 8 points on the team score, which is just, it's nuts, but it's also normal.
Yep.
So, you guys really came out of the gate well and really finished strong, and to book in the tournament like that, I think has to really make you feel good.
No, I do. I feel very good because you're absolutely right. My belief is those tournaments, you've got to put your foot on the line and be ready to go first match, right? Some guys will come out a little nervous, or they want to feel things out, and just Big Tens, there's a lot of good first round matches.
Yeah.
Devin staring down Cardani, who was a good kid right away. That's a first round match. There's a lot of very good Nienhouse having Tucker 8-9. They're both ranked, they're top 20, 25 kids, right? So they're tough matches out of the gate, and you don't have time to look around or kind of work into it, right? You can't just dip your toe in the water. You got to jump in head first. So I was happy that they jumped in and got going. I was also glad that they closed strong, right? There's a saying that I talk to my guys, it's, you got to have courage from the start, right? You gotta put your foot on the line with courage right away. You don't got time to work into this. And, you got to win the middle, and you got to fight to the finish, right? And so I do think we showed up right away, and we had courage right away, and we're going to need that at NCAA's first match. We're in shape, and I know we want it bad, so we'll battle, we'll fight to the finish. I think we got to win the middle. I think in the middle is where our tournament got away from us. And I say that in all earnest because I feel like, maybe we need to be up battling with Michigan for 4th. That would have been my goal. And I haven't looked at all the points. It's kind of not productive at this point, right? That might be something I do in the off season to really dive in a little deeper. But I honestly was feeling like, hey, we should be up there fighting with Michigan for 4th and making that a tighter battle. And so, those middle matches, conci semis, or that quarterfinal round, right? We went 8-1 early, but the quarterfinal round was not good for us. Like those are the situations I'm talking about where we could have changed some of our fortunes in our tournament. And I know every team is sitting at home thinking some similar things. I get that. But just where I feel like that middle is where we lost it a little bit in terms of getting everything out of the tournament we wanted to. So we got to do a little better job of winning the middle, and then it'll have to be that way at nationals too, right? You're going to have to show up first 10 seconds, establish the tempo and what's going to happen. You're going to have to fight in the third to close a match out. It's just that middle that's probably what I'm thinking of when I say, hey, our execution, you got to win the middle a little bit more sometimes.
That's a good place to leave things,
I think
Cory.
so. We're going to spend the next 5 days, 6 days figuring out how to win the middle. We'll be back with an NCAA tournament special come Monday. All right, guys, I'll let you get to the room, get your work in, and we'll see you next week. Boiler up.